All right. So this kind of came out of nowhere, right? Like,
Yeah, I definitely didn't expect it.
yeah, I wasn't like I didn't hear about it at all. And then all of a sudden, when Nintendo released the
Switch
uh,
OLED model.
Switch OLED model, Valve just came out and just dropped this out of nowhere. And everyone was like, "Whoa, what is going on here?" Um, so you and me both ordered a well, we didn't pre-order it. We reserved it, right? We reserved
Yes.
the right to buy it.
Yes.
So which
Which
model
is,
did
I mean,
you?
it's essentially a pre-order, right?
It's kind of, but it's not in the sense that it's more like a game reserve at GameStop, where you put down your $5, but you can cancel. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Whereas like a full pre-order is like you're basically buying the whole thing right out. You know,
Gotcha.
which
Okay.
I think is smarter that they did the reserve because a lot of people are hesitant to just drop, $400, $500 right away,
Yes.
especially when there's no reviews or anything, you know.
Yes.
So I think they did the right thing with $5 reservations.
Yes.
Um, so which model did you reserve?
I did the same model as you,
The
the
512.
512.
Okay. All right. So let's take a look at the comparisons between the Steam Deck and other modern consoles. So, all right, so this is a good article by The Verge where they basically break it down versus the Xbox Series X, the Xbox Series S, and the PlayStation 5. Now, the Switch isn't on here, and I
I
have
wonder
seen,
why.
yeah, I have seen comparisons to the Switch. It blows this. The Switch isn't even nowhere near any of these consoles. So, for all intensive purposes, like there's really no point to compare it to the Switch. The Switch has 4 GB of RAM. This thing has 16, and the architecture and the chip are totally blow the Switch out of the water. So it would have been cool if they had the Switch in this chart, but honestly, there's no comparison with the Switch in any of these consoles. To be honest,
Yes.
the Switch is just very underpowered at this point.
Well, it's just
So
it's just doing its own thing, and if anything, it actually makes the Switch even more impressive in
it
that,
is,
in this market,
yeah.
comparatively speaking, with the specs of other current generation consoles, that it's holding its own and even outselling in some points.
Yeah, and I think Digital Foundry, they did a great breakdown on the Steam Deck.
Yes.
They pretty much pointed out the Switch's or Nintendo's formula to success for the Switch, and that is very good developer support and developer optimization. That's pretty much what is making the Switch successful at this point. That and their first party titles. So, anyways, let's get back to the comparison here. So, you have the Valve Steam Deck all the way on the left. So you see it's got 4 core AMD Zen 2 CPU. Um, it's at 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz. All right. The Xbox Series X is 8 core, and that's at 3.8 gigahertz with SMT. And I'm not sure what SMT is.
It means Shin Megami Tensei.
Yeah. Um,
I actually
the
don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. Um, so the Xbox Series S is also 8 cores, and that's 3.6 gigahertz. So the Xbox Series X is actually the CPU is pretty close to the Xbox Series X. And then you have the PS5, which is also 8 core with 3.5 gigahertz.
Just so
Um,
you know, I just looked it up. It's simultaneous multi-threading. That's what SMT means.
okay, so that means that it's good at managing bandwidth. Well, so yeah, those are all in line. Now, Valve is half the cores. It doesn't have SMT, and it's 2.4 to 3.5 gigahertz. Now, I assume some smart people are going to find a way to overclock it to make it a steady 3.5 gigahertz.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that's going to be an option in the future. All right, so then let's look at the GPU. The GPU is, they all have the same. They have the AMD RDNA 2, and we have to look at the raw power though. So the Steam Deck has 8 CUs at 1 to 1.6 gigahertz. The Xbox Series X has 52 CUs at 1.825, and the Xbox Series S has 20 CUs, and the PS5 has 36 CUs. So as you can see here, the Xbox Series X. Oh, but you know what though? The PS5 has a higher clock frequency at 2.23 gigahertz. So the Xbox Series X and the PS5 are I would assume are pretty much in line. Um, Variable stats, but they're pretty close. But as you can see, the Xbox Series S is, you know, almost 2.5 times more powerful than the Valve Steam Deck. So
Yes.
you got to keep that in mind. Now let's look at the GPU power. So this is when you count everything, all these stats. The Steam Deck is 1.6. The Xbox Series X is 12.15. The Xbox Series S is 4. And the PS5 is 10.28. So this is raw power. And I believe even the PS4 and the Xbox One are like a little under 2. So they're even higher than the Valve Steam Deck. And then you have RAM. They all have 16 except for the Xbox Series S. But I believe that LPDDR5 is
Like the latest and greatest.
no, it might be a lower quality than the GDDR6.
Ah,
But I really don't think it's going to make much of a difference. You're still getting 16 gigs. And then the performance target. So this is where we have to. This is the most important stat I think here, because performance target means that this thing is engineered to achieve this, right? So for the Valve Steam Deck, you have 720p at 60 hertz, which for a handheld is good, right?
yes.
Because that's what the Switch is actually trying to accomplish as well. And their new OLED model is 720p, right?
Yes.
And then you look at the Xbox Series X. Their standard is 4K at 60 frames per second, and up to 8K. And they also want to push games at 120 frames per second. And I would assume those are going to be 1080p titles. And then you have the Xbox Series X, which is 1440p at 60 frames per second, up to 120. And then the Xbox or the PS5 target to be determined. Well, I think we can say with certainty that their goal is 4K.
Yes.
Especially when you look at the newer game like Ratchet and Clank, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which runs beautifully, I must say, on the PS5. And this one also supports up to 8K, up to 120 frames per second. So, yeah, that's the main like takeaway here, right?
Yes.
Is that at the end of the day, this thing is going for goals that are for a handheld. All right, it's not going for goals of a traditional, high-powered console or a desktop PC. All right. But we have to say that I want to say that even though the raw power is much less, this thing should perform better than a PS4 and an Xbox One, because of the new architecture. It's got the same architecture as the newer consoles. So that alone is going to boost its performance quite significantly.
It's
So
very current gen.
yes, I would put this thing, now it could be anywhere, but I would confidently put this thing between a PS4 and a PS5 as far as performance goes.
Didn't
Now,
Digital Foundry compare it to an Xbox Series S?
yes, yeah. So it's like a weaker Xbox Series S, which is not bad at all,
Yeah.
and is quite capable. Now, I do want to say that the Xbox Series S only supports up to 1440p. This thing can support up to 8K, right? And that's because it's a PC, and they're giving the flexibility. Now, will it ever be able to play any kind of game at 8K? Probably not. But will it be able to play like a
It'll play Minecraft at 8K.
yeah? Will it be able to play a turn-based strategy game at 8K? Maybe. It may be. Or I would say definitely at 4K. You could probably
This
get away.
the new Diablo remaster.
Yeah.
Diablo
Yeah.
2, pardon.
You could probably play very non-graphically intense games at 4K using this thing. So that's definitely going to be a test. And then I want to point out something very interesting that I found out. So let's pull this up. And I actually sent this to you and John this morning because I found it last night. So a lot of people were worried about the hard drive space because the base model is only 64 gigs of a lower quality hard drive, right?
Yes.
It's still fast, but it's not as fast as an NVMe. But the 215 and the 512 are still going to fill up relatively quickly depending on which games you play. But someone emailed Gabe Newell and he responded that all three models have a 2230 M2 slot. So that means that if you're like technically sound or you can, hire someone, you can put another hard drive, another internal SSD hard drive into all three of the models. Okay. So I think that's important. I think they should have told people that before they purchased. But I the the thinking is that they didn't tell anyone because most users are unable to mod it that way, right?
Not just that, but doesn't the article also state that it would probably void the warranty on it? Like it's kind of like modifying the system in a way that they don't actually want you to do.
Yeah, maybe, but also I'm looking at the fact that they designed this thing to be able
To be expanded.
exactly. And they also designed it so that you could do whatever you want with it. Like you don't even have to keep their software on it. You can totally turn this into a Windows gaming PC if you want. So who knows? It might void it just because like legally that's what every company does, right? If you're opening it up. But I would say the risk is low if someone who knows a lot about like laptop repair or does it. I would say the risk is pretty low to any kind of damage. So there you have it. All three models have another SSD slot, which is very cool.
Yes.
Like I said,
Get that 2 terabyte NVMe in there.
dude, you just do it once and you're set for years.
Exactly.
Or you can just swap in and out
Micro
SD cards. Yeah, and you know what? That's kind of makes sense because it kind of makes it almost like similar to a Switch in a way, right? Because you just load all your games on one card, right? And then when you want to play them, just label your cards and you switch them in and out. You know what I mean? It's not that hard, right?
I mean, there's 1 terabyte cards, and aren't 2 terabyte micro SD cards on the way?
Maybe I don't know. That's a good question. That's a good question. I was considering just buying a 512 to start off with.
And there's 1 terabytes for
Okay.
Well, actually, it's practically double the 512. So,
Yeah, yeah.
in terms of price,
I usually go one step lower than the newest cutting edge
fair.
because the newest cutting edges usually cost an arm and a leg, you know?
That's true.
So yeah, um, I mean, I think we talked about this. Valve hit a nerve here in the gaming community. Um, People were expecting a more powerful Switch.
Didn't
They
get it.
didn't get it, and Valve capitalized literally the same day. Like, so I mean, what's your opinion on this? Do you think this could change the landscape of gaming?
Uh, I mean, it really does. Time will tell. Time will
Yeah,
definitely tell because
yeah,
I can't. It already has shown that there is interest. Um, and these things did sell out, so that's already a good thing. People are hyped for it, and this will introduce a family-friendly version of PC gaming that people don't tend to just go into.
yes, yeah,
So this is very much for the end users out there that haven't really taken that leap into the PC gaming space. And
yes,
this looks both accessible and affordable, which are two important factors. Now, one thing that I would say is that price point really the price point for people for the end user, comparatively speaking, to say someone that might be interested in a Switch?
yeah.
Because I mean, yes, it's $50 more, but it doesn't have those Switch games. But oh my God, the library on Steam is insane.
It's massive.
And not just
It's
that, but
massive.
Steam sales are incredible.
Oh, yeah, you
So
you can't even
so
compare game prices between Nintendo and Steam.
so I mean, but here's the thing: will people know that? How will Steam market that? Because Steam doesn't really, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, doesn't really market
No,
themselves.
no. I
I
don't
mean,
see any Steam ads.
people just know,
Yes.
or people that are in the know just know.
Yeah.
So I mean, Epic is on an uphill battle. They're trying to fight against Steam.
Yeah.
So that's why I see a lot of like it's on Epic or it's Epic exclusive.
Yeah.
Steam hasn't needed to do that because they've dominated in that space.
Yes. Well, dude, I was looking at my Steam account. I set it up in 2005. So I was one of the earliest adopters of cloud gaming. You know what I mean?
It's interesting because they've kind of rested on their laurels for a long time.
Yeah.
And granted, uh, they have tried, what was it, the Steam Index?
Yes, which, as far as I can tell, is very good, but it's just very expensive. It's $1,000, and there's not many of them. You know what I mean?
Price people out. And there's
Yeah,
the Steam Box. The
yeah,
Steam Box. I was actually kind of interested in the Steam Box.
yeah.
Um, but then I was like, why not just get a PC?
Exactly. So this entices people further than the Steam box did.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly.
Because at the end of the day, a Steam box was so generic that you could just make your own if you wanted to. You know what I mean?
Yes.
You
No,
didn't
and,
have.
and, and I
Yeah.
did. You actually built mine, remember?
Yes. Yeah. I did build you a gaming PC.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I would say, look, you and John reserved one. You're part of the demographic that doesn't have a high-powered gaming PC.
Correct. I have
Yeah.
I mean my PC struggles to play Dark Souls.
Yeah. So this is for you guys. And funny enough, I have a friend I was trying to convince so hard to get this because it's for him because he has a very like you know older gaming PC and it's just not working right and all his games he has to put down on lower settings and we haven't been able to help him get a gaming PC because you can't get GPUs right now. It's so hard to get a gaming PC. Then Valve comes out with the perfect solution, like, and you don't have to play it as a handheld. you can just plug it into a screen and then hook up a mouse and keyboard, and it's a desktop at that point, you know. And so I was like, dude, this is for you, man. They made this for you.
I
And
just
I
want to make sure you don't need the dock in order to connect it
no,
to a screen. You can connect
no.
it to a screen just via the console itself.
Yeah, actually, I don't have it here with me, but I have one of those covert Genki covert docks for the Nintendo Switch.
Yes.
I'm pretty sure you can use that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, yeah. Because it picks up the signal from the USB
See?
C. Yeah, yeah. And then it
Okay, that's
just,
very cool.
yeah, yeah. So there's a bunch of those devices out there. So yeah, you don't even need a dock. You can just buy like a little stand and then just hook it up to something like a covert dock. So,
My question is, like, how will I because I'm not familiar with the PC gaming space
mhm.
because I'm predominantly a console player. And that's one of the reasons though I think people end users or people like myself veer towards console is because you don't really have to think about the specs of your
Yeah,
PC and whether a game will run on it or not, whether the next game will run on it or not,
yeah,
because these consoles are standardized
yep,
and developers develop for these consoles.
yes.
That being said, I'm wondering if, in terms of like the actual console itself for the Steam Deck, like how mod support will work on it.
Yeah, so that's a good question. I would assume the way to do mod support would be
Because that's
you
one of the reasons why like I want to play PC versions of games is because like they can break the molds in these games where we can use fan-made mods.
yes. Yeah. I would assume that you would just have to the easiest way to do it would be hook up a mouse and keyboard
Mm.
and download the mod and just manually move it to whatever
Folder needs to be
folder.
put in.
Yeah. It honestly it should be that simple.
Yeah.
To
Okay.
be honest, yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I mean, there's excitement. Like I had a little, there's a little bit of trepidation first
Hmm.
because this is a completely digital console because
Yes.
it's Steam,
Yeah.
you're dealing with Steam. But I mean, I do purchase games on Steam, and it's mostly because
They're
the
cheap.
sales,
They're
the sales
cheap,
are
man.
insane,
Yeah.
and I can't play Fallout New Vegas on my Switch.
Yeah. 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 And also a lot of the best indie games on the Switch came out on Steam first.
Correct.
You know,
Like
like
like Hades.
yeah, or Ender Lilies. Yeah, so yeah, the potential's there, and I do want to say that I don't think they developers have to optimize for the this Steam Deck as much as people think because, like you and me were talking, when people make PC games, they add so many settings. You know what I mean? Like you can go
I
down
mean,
to like
they go to a minimum setting. They have to
yes,
have a
they
minimum
have to
setting.
have a minimum setting. Yeah. So you're going to be able to play most of these new AAA titles on PC at 720p at 60 frames a second. So I really don't see much of an issue here with compatibility. So
Well, the one important thing that you haven't brought up that I think you're the one that told it, or John told me in the chat. Game Pass support.
oh yeah, I actually did bring that up. Yeah.
Game Pass
Um
support is huge.
yeah, yeah. Oh, and I also brought up the fact that this thing is going to be an emulation beast. You
Yes.
know, like you're going to people don't realize they're looking at this like they look at a normal console. This is not a normal this is a PC in a handheld form. This thing is going to be able to have so many games. It's going to blow your mind. It's going to have more Nintendo games than a Switch.
It's gonna blow your mind. You're looking
Yeah.
at the future.
Yeah. It's going to have more Nintendo games than a Switch. It's going to have more Sony games than a PlayStation. It's going to be insane. And it's going to have Game Pass. So, I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's also a huge selling point for
Yeah.
it. Just mobile Xbox One, which even then Xbox, and by Xbox One I meant like Xbox games.
Yeah.
But even Xbox themselves with Game Pass, they want to be accessible
Mhm.
anywhere. So having instead of like buying a specialized controller or tethering a controller to
Mhm.
your cell phone and then having your cell phone on a cradle of some sort,
xCloud.
everything's right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Everything's right there with the what I think is actually a pretty good looking machine. What do you think about the aesthetics of it?
Yeah. A lot of people were saying it reminds them of a Game Gear. and
That Game Gear was bulky as hell. My
yeah.
cousin had a Game Gear. I was so jealous.
Yeah.
Like I was with my Game Boy, like my fat original Game Boy, and he
Can't
had his
see in the
Game Gear.
dark. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Those colors were really vibrant. Granted, it only lasted like 20 minutes, but
Yeah.
still.
Um, yeah, there was a lot of people though saying it was ugly and they wouldn't buy it for that reason, but I think that's very short-sighted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mean, I personally don't think that it's ugly. It's very incredibly similar to the Switch. It's not
Yeah.
as well balanced as the Switch, and I think it's because of the touchpads.
Yes.
Uh, but those touchpads are a necessity
Hmm. For
for the.
PC
Yes, exactly.
and also for games like, StarCraft or League of Legends or something like that.
But I do find it interesting that the D-pad and the analog stick are parallel to each other,
Yes.
as well as the right-handed D-pad or the right-handed analog stick with the buttons.
Yes. Yeah, that is. Yeah, well, we'll have to experiment with it. I'm sure a lot of people are gonna
Put it through its
custom,
paces.
yeah, yeah, customize how they use this thing.
But even then, it does have controller support. Funny enough.
Yes. Yeah,
So,
you could essentially just
so, so,
plop,
so, so
plop.
then you're
Yeah,
putting yourself in the same position as like a cell phone.
yeah. It just has the sky's the limit with this thing. There's just so many ways to use it.
Right.
So yeah, I'm hyped, man. I'm
No,
excited.
no, no, no. If anything, funny enough, Gio he went ahead and he was on top of it from the jump,
Hmm.
and he went ahead and pre-ordered the initial wave. It wasn't until after that that I was like, like seeing Gio's hype and also reading more about the system, like I started to get sold, and that's why in the second wave, I was able to pre-order one for the
Yeah,
quarter 2 2022 release.
yeah, and we don't know how many. There's speculation that the first wave was over 100,000, which is not much, but you have to consider that this is Valve's first like gaming console.
And it's during a chip shortage.
Yes, so they probably were very conservative with this initial ordering phase. So yeah, there you have it, man. I'm super excited.
Yeah, I'm
I
excited
hope
as well.
I'm hoping that I'm one of the first waves that get it in December. Um, and yeah, I'm gonna turn this thing into a dedicated PC machine in my gaming room. So I'm gonna hook it up to my main TV, and it's gonna be awesome. Honestly, I can't wait because I have a Steam Link, but the Steam Link is like it doesn't support all your games. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I think the
Well,
game has to be supported by Steam Link.
well, that's a good question actually. It depend like what games are there? Will there be games that are not supported that won't be able to be played on the Steam Deck?
Yeah.
I imagine that there will be. Kind of like a good example is like the original Witcher, which I was actually just playing
Yeah.
on Steam. Like you don't have any kind of controller support for that game. It has
Yes.
to be played with a keyboard and mouse.
So what I would say is there's two things here. One, there's something called okay. First of all, if the game is not developed natively for Linux, it's going to use a middleware called Proton, which is a Windows emulation layer. There's a database called ProtonDB. I believe it's protondb.com. You can go there and see the compatibility of the game, right?
Mm,
And also, Valve said they're going to work extra hard to increase that compatibility the best they can.
that's very
So
cool.
yeah, so they're probably gonna have a compatibility division, kind of like how Xbox does with their platforms.
Yeah, man,
Um,
but they kind of stopped. Like, I'm still waiting for Otogi to be backwards compatible.
yeah, yeah. I've never played that game yet.
I played it on the original Xbox, but I haven't brought that out in a while. So
Yeah. And also, I want to point out that if there is a game and you want to play it and it's not supported by Proton, you don't have to do this. I know it's going to be troublesome for some people, but you can just straight up install Windows and just run the games natively. You don't have to use SteamOS, and I think that's the important thing people should be aware of. So if anyone tells you, yeah, but can it run this game? The answer is yes. It can. It can run that game. Yeah, it can run all the games.
Can it run Breath of the Wild?
Yes, actually, yeah. There's a believe it or not, I never did this because I own a Switch and I beat it on Switch, but there is a Windows version of Breath of the Wild that somebody made.
Oh,
Yeah.
not
It
surprised.
obviously it's illegal, but
Yeah,
it's out there and it's on Windows. So, all right.
interesting. Okay.